Why do the good suffer? Doesn't suffering prove God does not exist? What would you say?
This is an argument which has had tremendous effect in keeping people from a serious belief in God. But the argument is irrational and it's unrealistic. Let me try an analogy. We'll say that my child is 14 years of age, and the question is, what about going dancing? Now, as a parent, I am all-powerful in this area. The law will uphold any decision that I make in regard to whether or not my child goes dancing. Also, I love my child, and I want the very best thing for the child. And I know that there are some pretty sleazy joints where dancing goes on in my community, and that my child may very well end up badly influenced in those situations. Now, will it follow from the fact that I am omnipotent in reference to the dancing problem and all-loving, will it follow that I will necessarily keep my child from dancing? Certainly not, because there'll be another factor in this, and the other factor is that I want to be sure that I have the right kind of relationship with my child, a relationship of genuine love working in two directions, and I will therefore have to allow the child to make the child's own decisions after having given the very best advice. Because only where free will operates in a situation like that is it going to be possible for the child to operate in a mature fashion. Give you an analogy. The sheriff's deputies get another tip that something awful has happened at the old mansion at Gopher Gulch. Those of you who heard a prior program will connect this up. They arrive at the old mansion, and their worst suspicions are again realized. Mrs. Schlonk has kept her son Lemuel in the attic until he is 35 years of age. And she is, of course, hauled off, indicted, and released on bail, and she appears on the local TV program. It is not the John Ankerberg Show, I might emphasize. The camera swings to her, and the narrator says, "Mrs. Schlonk, I know I speak for every member of our audience when I ask you the question, why did you keep Lemuel in the attic until he was 35 years of age?" She says, "I'm glad you asked me this. I wanted to answer this question, but of course I couldn't. The reason is that I love Lemuel. I love Lemuel as other mothers do not love their children. I did not let Lemuel go out and play baseball and get hit in the head with a baseball bat. I did not let Lemuel cross the street and get hit by a truck. I didn't let him get into drugs or have bad companions. I kept him in the attic until he was 35 because I loved him." Camera swings to Lemuel. Lemuel is crazier than a March hare because he has been in the attic until he's 35. It does not follow that simply because one has power and goodness that he will not restrict his power so as to allow those people over whom he has the power to operate on the basis of free will. The reason for evil is ultimately the misuse of free will by God's creatures. And ironically, we misuse our free will, and then we turn around and we say, "What's the matter with you, God? Why have you created this mess?"
What does the Bible say concerning His creatures? The classical statement goes like this. Now let me give you the biblical question. God is the author of everything in the world. He's the creator of everything in the world. Evil is something in the world. We're not Christian Scientists here. We believe it's something that's real. Therefore, God, if He is the author of everything and evil is here, God must be the author of evil. Right?
Wrong.
Why?
Because evil, though real, is not a thing. Evil is the product of a misuse of a relationship. Take the biblical approach to the origin of evil. According to the Bible, one of God's creatures who had free will, as all God's creatures do, one of God's creatures very close to him decided that he would become equal with God, going against his own nature and against the proper order of things. As a result of this, he fell, and the consequences for the universe were similar to throwing a monkey wrench into a machine. Then everything went off to a certain extent. Now, at the beginning, you didn't have anything other than God and the creature. Evil came about as a result of the misuse of that relationship. Evil is not a bucket of stuff which God must have created because he created all buckets of stuff. Evil is the name we give to the perversion of the stuff that God created by creatures who have ruined their relationship with God.
Right. Evil is the lack of a thing. But that brings us to the further question of why is it that God allowed that in the first place? Why didn't he put a stop to it or come up with a different plan? Because, man, we're dealing with tough things here. The effects are terrible.
Well, according to the Scriptures, God is love, and therefore he wants to have the best kind of relationship possible with his creatures. God is not a puppet master. And the reason why evil came about is because there was genuine free will and the creature genuinely misused it. God gave his creatures free will from the beginning because only in that way could the creature relate to him and God relate to the creature. Otherwise, it would have been a situation where you could imagine it, God on the parapets of heaven and his creature down there, and God says, "Do you love me?" And then you notice a slight twitching of the hands and very thin cords going down, and the creature looks up and says, "Yes, God, I love you." That's not love. It's only love if it is personally the product of volition. And free will or volition means uncaused action. You can't ask, what caused free will? That's a contradiction in terms. There was a cartoon in the New Yorker a few years ago showing these two criminals in the state pen, and one says to the other, "I wonder what it was about my genetic pattern that made me a safecracker and made you a forger." You see? Well, of course, the answer is that people don't become forgers or safecrackers as a result of that. They become forgers or safecrackers because of some volitional act on their part for which they are in fact responsible.